Chapter 3. The roar of the big motor jolted. Ben ran out of a deep sleep. He sat bolt upright, rubbing his eyes. Seemed and shut. That wasn't his bed. Where was he? The engine noise was intensely felt, churning in his stomach. What makes a loud sound like that? A garbage truck? A semi? Or maybe he managed to focus enough to take his eye out of the parlor. A cane carrying a giant wrecking ball. Oh, Griffin! A shape stirred Griffin's sleeping bag. Ben tore open the zipper to reveal his slumbering gun. Griffin, wake up. Well, it's morning. They're tearing down the building. Griffin popped like a cork. Let's get out of here, he cried. The two scrambled out the window, the engine vibrating. His thud. Griffin got first stuffed into two sleeping bags. Then Ben found the missing planks, and he was halfway out, and his stomach over the sill. He realized he couldn't move forward or backwards. I'm stuck, he hissed. Ben grabbed him by the wrist and hauled him out. Griffin remaining hung in the opening. A treacherous crash shook the building, and the very earth of Ben's feet impacted pinched Griffin out of the window, sending him sprawling on top of Ben. Two scrambling up, dazed, was white with plaster dust from the waist down. Run, he bellowed. They fled, the sleeping bags trailing behind them. As they rounded the corner, a chilling sight met their eyes. The Titanic wrecking ball buried deep and shattered the old Rockford house. They needed any more reason to get away from there. The horrified job foreman. Hey, you. This is an active demolition zone. Coach Nims would have been amazed to the speech and stamina they escaped. Were doing much greater, showed in gym class. The two kept their lines in a sprint for several minutes. They stared by loud booms behind them. They were halfway across the Griffins to a slow walk. The next time you get a brilliant idea, like spending the night at a death trap, Ben panicked. Pretend my number is unlisted. In the distance, there was a long rumble, followed by an earth-shaking thump. There was almost, my mother didn't raise me to be, he rumbled. No risk, no reward, said Griffin, catching his breath. Some rewards. We got revenge on the town for our skate park, only nobody knows it but us. Griffin pulled a Babe Ruth card out of his pocket and waved under his friend's nose. Read it and weep it. He gave Ben a quick recap on the discovery he found in the secret drawer. Babe Ruth? Wow, do you think this is real? Griffin shrugged. Makes sense. Old house, old card. The question is, what is it worth? But Griffin said, it's not yours, Ben whispered. Griffin played the plum of dust swirled in the air and several blocks behind them. You knocked down your house? You're really just throwing it in the garbage? No, it's not stealing if you take something out of the garbage, is it? Besides, you guard the card rightfully the sandwich of champions. It's probably not valuable. I never get that lucky. How can you find out for sure? Asked Ben. There are experts on this kind of things. Ben's eyes widened. Palmo knows Emperor. Griffin smiled bravely. We'll get an appraisal, almost exporium of collectibles and memorabilia. Was a fortress until itself was located just at the main strip of town in a local building surrounded by high chain-link fences that Griffin thought was a prisoner of war camp. It had to be a stone-cutting workshop. A young child and Ben always had been fascinated by the display of markings on the small courtyard, and now the headstone had been replaced with slick grass and a large dog that was thankfully asleep. Griffin indicated the front door. Vintage items bought and sold, best prices guarantee, owner and properties. Palm, no. Although they lived less than a mile away, it was their first time inside the store. They never came out like a museum, a comic shop. A museum where you could look but not touch, and everything was under surveillance by room-faced guards that had no shelf, cutlery, books, toys, knickknacks, cards, spores, and Paul's experiment was frozen in a glass case with harsh lighting and security wiring. The whole place felt welcoming and warm as a bank vault. Ben leaned into one of the display scene action figure. $640? Are they crazy? A tall man with a ring of white hair around a bald crown walked over him. That's because it's a genuine 1966 Mr. Spoke doll from the classic TV show Star Trek TV series. Still, it's in the original package. And friend, what kid has $600 to spend on a toy? Exactly, the man agreed. This isn't a toy store where collectibles aren't for kids. They're for serious investments. Or it's a serious investment. Are you Mr. Palmer? Griffin asked. I'm Tom Duffin, the assistant manager. He stretched out a bony arm, indicated the other man who was behind a long counter inserting comic books in a precisely sized protective sleeve. That's the big boss over there. S. Weldell Poliomino was short, stocky, and surprisingly young, in his mid-30s. Griffin guessed not nearly as ancient as Tom Duffer, or his curly hair almost, but not quite, fit underneath the New York Rangers cap. Thick glasses made his eyes appear twice the size, like two eggs, sunny side up. He turned those eggs on his sixth-grade visors. What can I do for you, young gentlemen? Griffin pulled out his Babe Ruth card. I'm thinking of selling this. I hear you guarantee best prices. The owner extended a pudgy hand and accepted the last surviving piece of the Rockford estate. His bushy eyebrows shot up straight in the Rogers logo on his hat. Griffin was immediately alert. It's valuable? He asked. Henry laughed shortly. Well, it would be if it was real. You see, there are a lot of old cards, and they're reused in the 60s and 70s. This one is Top Dog Bakery line. It was a knockoff in 1967. I've seen a couple of these before, but not in a long time. Excellent quality reproduction. He told the card, a large magnifying glass attached to the counter. You see this solid blue border? This was stripped in the original. They weren't allowed to make an exact replica because it would have violated counterfeiting laws, and that is how it's a copy. Ben took crestfallen, looking at Griffin in his face. 1967 was a long time ago, he said hopefully. That's still a little bit of value, right? Absolutely, the collectibles dealer confirmed. Why would I saw a whole set of these at once go for $1,500, but a single card like this? Well, I'm a sucker for the Bambino. I'll give you $100 for it. Griffin sighed. His vision of solving the family's money was popping like soap bubbles. Still, he had a born negative. 150, he said instantly. Honor chuckled. You drive a hard bargain, sonny boy. Tell you what, 120. Sold. The dealer counted out 6 crisp $20 bills on a thick roll and accepted the card in return. The boys peered over the counter, and stole the safe at his feet, opened the door and locked it. Griffin frowned. If the card isn't valuable, how come you need to keep it in a safe? This isn't Toys R Us, sonny boy, lectured Palmer, out of a breath of a simple act of straightening up. We take security seriously at Palmer. A baseball card is the easiest thing in the world to swipe. Stick it in your pocket and nobody even knows it's there. It stays in a lockbox until it's cataloged and ready for the display case. Can't somebody just steal the whole safe? Ben put in. The dealer snorted. You kids kill me. Steal the safe? That's funny. Griffin spoke up to his friend. He means it's not very big, and there's a handle on the top. You could pick it up and walk out the door. And I go back in. 2 boys sighed. All right, you guys give it a try. Griffin and Ben got a firm grip on the handle and pulled the lockbox to budge. Come on. The dealer was grinning at them. Now put some muscle into it. Grunting with effort, they pulled with all their might. Nothing. Palmer burst out laughing. Faces, it's bolted to the floor. Embarrassed, Griffin and Ben slunk out behind the counters and headed for the door. Tom Duffin asked with a simplistic smile. They passed by. You're not the first one to try it. I doubt you'll be the last. Pleasure doing business with you, young gentlemen, Mary called them. Come back any time. As they passed the sleeping dog and stepped outside the fence, both boys relaxed visible. There was Palmer's expert, almost if the store had its own energy field. Ben took a breath of fresh air. Sorry you're not rich, and answer. Griffin took out his money and peeled out 3 20s, handed them to Ben. Your cut, he said. I didn't do anything, Ben protested. Sure you did. You stuck with the plan and everyone else failed. How is it with Griffin? Always the plan, even when the plan had nearly gotten them buried under a building. Chapter 4. By the way, guys, I might not read all the way to chapter 5, but I will try. Chapter 4. The light was on in the garbage. There was no big surprise. The light was always on in the garbage in Mr. Bing's workshop, up as long as Griffin could remember. His father tinkering with some invention there, but his dad became so obsessed with his creations that he quit the engineering job so he could develop full-time the smart pig TM, a fruit picker of the future. When Griffin retreated to the garbage later after to escape his parents' argument, they protested. It lay on the bench work, and Griffin pressed the button on the telescope. Aluminum shaft wired outward heard to the control of the opposite direction, and the pole reduced itself of nothing in the fruit safe TM, picking merchandise and padded prints, and twisting motion rather than cutting and blade for 0% chance of damage. Produce was involved in agriculture. Only who needs a smart pick when they have perfectly good humans with real hands? Griffin felt guilty for his loyalness, thought the common sense would leave him alone. The Bing had left their entire future, called it revolutionary. Otherwise, Dad would keep his job. Nobody would be thinking about smart pick. His parents were in the kitchen right now, tearing their hair over some bill they didn't even have enough money to pay. They raised their voices and carried out home. Brick agonized. Sell A to pay for B. Cut corners, spend less, economize. And the worst part, they were absolutely. Griffin could do nothing about it. He was the man with the plan, and he might as well be the blob of Play-Doh for all he could help his family. He was too young to get a part-time job. He couldn't even handle $60 from a Babe Ruth card without confessing. Old Rockford House escaped as he sat down. The smart pick and the pole brushed against the auditorium. His father told black and white TV for an instant. The 10-inch screen revolved itself, a very familiar face, before returning to Snow's. Griffin faded into the aerial unit. The picture returned. No, he was seeing things grinning out at him. There was an unmistakable future of Babe Ruth. It was a baseball card, the old Rockford House. He turned up the sound. When I bought this collection, I had no idea. Instantly, I laid on wow, Griffin recognized the breathless as the speaker just ran a marathon. The sunny side up eggs, Eswell and Pulmonary appeared on the small screen. What's a guy who sells overpriced Star Trek dolls doing on TV? Griffin wondered. The dealer stood up in the courtyard in the Pulmonary, holding the Babe Ruth card for a group of reporters and cameramen. There are a lot of similar cards out there, one was saying. What makes this one so special? It was printed in 1920, Pulmonary explained. Babe Ruth was the first session as a Yankee, but looked at the picture. A cameraman zoomed in. That's a Red Sox uniform, he observed. Pulmonary nodded. Especially right, the Top Dog Bakery people who wanted to compete with the cigarette and chewing gum companies and a baseball card market, and they were already rolling before the trade thought. They were able to come back most of the run. They were able to call, but 200 copies were released into circulation. Only a handful was known today, and this card is especially valuable. Well, Griffin felt his blood boil. That liar, that cheat. He said it was fake, a knockoff from the 60s. He invented a whole story about it to sold the board and said, stripped one. How much is it worth? Well, another reporter piped up. How much are you selling it for, gentlemen? The dealer chuckled. Obviously, 11 minute. This isn't the kind of item slap a price tag on and stick out the window. The cards only sold to the highest bidder. The Washington Annual supports memorabilia auction on October 17th. The opening bid will be paused dramatically. $200,000. Griffin nearly choked on the reporter's astonishment. Do you think you can get that much? Asked the woman. I think I can get more, Homnary replied. So ugly. from famous T206 that frequently six figures amount. Legendary 1909 Holzweiger recently went over 2 million. This misprint showed the Bambino in a red saw uniform as rare. The people at Washington think it could be sir. This history could break the $1 million barrier. $1 million? Griffin could not believe it. It was right in the palm of his hands, enough to solve their money problems for life. I'm glad to be over. Bends Griffin in the direction of the kitchen, where the answer of his parents were still reading the checkbook and arguing that it wouldn't make it happening. It's not for S. Pulmonary. He jumped and paddled down the driveway. He hoped Mom and Dad were too precautious to look out the window to notice turning left and away from the Salvo house. In his mind, he arrived at the Pulmonary and press conference was breaking up. The reporter crew was filming in the opening of the fence. Watchful eye and Sicker's me kid hit a surrounded brush past Griffin, bumping into the microphone's boom. Suddenly, Griffin realized that he had no idea what he should do next. Being the man with a plan, and he had thought no further, getting himself to the store. What could he say? This car, that's not his card, it's mine. Technically, that wasn't true. Griffin said he sold and you paid it in full. Another trick by implying the card wasn't real. It was a shady underneath, but this lazy by itself, it wasn't against the law. Besides, nobody believed him, and he had no proof except he refused to sit a 3-minute presentation at the skate park, bringing the acceptive balance of Griffin at the store and blocked the teeth bar on top of everything else, intimidating about this place. And one attack dog. That's okay, Luther, came a voice from inside. Relentlessly, the dog's man backed away, and Griffin entered. Pulmonary was usually spot behind the counter. With effort, he tore his attention from the baseball card in his hands. What can I do for you, sonny boy? You knew, Griffin accused him. The minute I bought that thing, and I could tell it was no fake. Wait, the dealer said, you're not saying this was a piece of junk? You sold this card, it was a collectible, and you got the estate sale? The West Coast, good luck, it happened. Somebody up there must like me. So where's my card? Griffin demanded. Show me my worthless piece of junk next to your Babe Ruth masterpiece. I already sold it, took a bath on it too. You were lucky I gave you as much as I did. Griffin started at him, blown away by the sheer dishonesty of the man. Wasn't some kid, it was an adult, the owner of the business. How could he act this way? Pulmonary to a big fat scary place filled with people who chew you up and spit you out and give you half a chance, considering this is your first life lesson. I came to your fair deal, Griffin sputtered. Oh, I'm down off your high horse, the dealer sneered. You were after money, just like I was after money. Everybody's after money. Some of us are just a little bit better at it than all. Griffin narrowed his eyebrows. We'll get away from this. Pulmonary laughed. That was the wrong thing. 19th of the law in collectibles games. This is the 10th law. If it isn't your hand, you don't own it. Now get out of my store. But he whistled sharply with a growl that was more like a roar, burst into the shop. The men sprang Griffin, who backed away, considering painful with a display case. The Yoda action figure, the big dog's snapping jaws, were just inches away from his trembling chin. Easy with the promenade, commanded with the dog, withdrew a half step, but no more. Terrified, Griffin managed to sidestep the Yodas and retreat into the direction to the exit. We appreciate your business. Please do not come again, the dealer heckled gleefully as Griffin turned and ran out the door. Or back on his bike, Griffin suggested 2 wires sprang and caught into some kind of order. 1. I've been cheated. Picture during the sentence might have appeared to be famous. Plans feel a little more in control. Cheated, that was exactly what had happened. Out of a lot of baseball, $1 million to develop the smart pick, even though the invention turned into a bust. That money would allow Dad to find a new job, start over. This would be an entire future for the Bing family. It was time for the man with the plan to embark on the most important plan of his life. But could it possibly? He lawsuit bank barely pay their mortgage. Where were they going to get the money? For lawyers, no, there was only one way to get that call back. Pulmonary had sold from him. Griffin had to fight fire with fire. That's chapter 5. Yeah.